Hey everybody, this is John here. So I'm going to walk you through the steps to submit your project to the Git repository. This video is going to be for Windows users only. There will be another video for Mac users, but let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go from the very beginning, just for folks who haven't been able to do this process yet. So once you have a GitLab account created and you log in, you'll get your home page. And the first thing we need to do is set an SSH key pair between your machine and the Git repository. Now to do that, if you come to the top right hand side and see you have my user settings, I'm going to come to settings. So there's my sweet bald face. And then I'm going to go down to SSH keys. And so under SSH keys, this is where you add the public key. So the private key remains on your machine, and then you give the private key to GitLab. Now to create a public-private key pair on Windows, so you should have downloaded TortoiseGit, and a part of TortoiseGit, there's a program called PuttyyGen. I'm going to say OK to that. And within PuttyyGen, it has this actions to generate public-private key pair. So I'm going to say generate. And you have to move the mouse around because what it's doing is generating some random numbers. It's using that to seed the algorithm for the public-private key pair. So now it's come back. It's generated both keys. What we need to do is save the private key to the machine. So if I come down here and say save private key, it'll ask if you want to save it without a passphrase. I'll say OK. And I'm just going to overwrite a file that you have. You can name this whatever you like, but it saves it as this PPK file. So I'm going to go ahead and say save. So if I overwrite it, that's fine. Now I'm going to copy the public key. I'm going to copy this piece. And now I'm going to paste it here in GitLab. So underneath here, it asks for a title. You can name it whatever you like. So I'm just going to name it Windows public key. Save. And so now you should get this little fingerprint and this little message, so everything's A-OK. So that's good. So now I'm going to come back to GitLab. Let's come to the upper left hand side. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a project. So I'm going to call this Windows Unity project. I'm going to say create. All right. And so some of you have already been at this or are at this stage. So you have an empty repository up on GitLab. For those who have yet to do that, and you're now at this step, the next part you need to do is come to settings, and you need to add myself as a member to your project. So this is the way that you're granting me access to be able to look at it. So if you come to the project and click settings members, what I need you to do is add me. And my username is John Wetzel. You have to add me as a developer. And for those who've already done this process, I'd like you to add Allie as a developer. And her username is Xandra V. And it comes back as Alexandra Valdez. So if you could, please add her as a developer. And then company and go add project. So users are added. So this is still even applicable to those who've gone through this process, just to have Allie as a member of your project. So now if I click on the user project, so now what I need to do is I have this empty repository, and I now need to get this empty repository from GitLab onto my machine. And the way that we do that is through the cloning process. So I'm going to come to this directory. So Unity project, this is the directory that has my Unity project I've been running in class. If I right click in this window, and you see now TortoiseGit has added these three options: git clone, TortoiseGit. So I'm going to say git clone. And now it's here's the URL. If I switch back to the Windows project. So here it gives this address. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. I'm going to come back and paste it here. So now I'm trying to access this via SSH. And here's the the address for it and the name of it. And so now here's the directory it's going to save. So it's going to save it in this Windows Unity project. All that looks good. The last part, and this part that messed up for me in class, is loading the PuTTY key. So this is where you say, here's my private key that I want to pass. So then GitLab can verify that I am who I say I am. So if I click load private key, and I can search for it, so I'm going to use this Windows private key. So now everything looks like it's set up. I say OK. So you may get this window that pops up. Really, this is saying, hey, I've never connected this computer before. Can I go ahead and do that? And you can say yes. And so now you'll get the success message coming back saying everything's OK. So I'm going to close that. And so now if I come back and look on my folder, I now have this Unity Windows project. So here's the empty repository. And for TortoiseGit users, you get this little green check. And so what the green check means is that everything between what's on my local machine and what's on the repository is exact. And it's exact because there's nothing in there. So that's fine. Everything's A-OK. So the next thing we need to do is actually get put the project we've been working on into the repository. So probably the easiest way to do that, if I come into Unity project, and I'm just going to copy really the kind of the two things that you truly need for any Unity project is the assets directory and the project settings. I'm going to go ahead and click on both of those. Now, library and packages, these get auto-generated by Unity. So these always get rebuilt. So if you were to say even to delete these, it would try to rebuild, like Unity would try to rebuild them. But assets and project settings, those are the key pieces. So I'm going to copy those. I'm going to put those into my Windows project. So everything's copying. It's OK. And so right now these two are sitting in there. And so the next part I need to do, so any files that I'm putting into my repository that haven't been there previously, I need to add into this. And so the way I can do that, so if I click, so I right clicked, now I see this git commit and this arrow master. I'm going to click on that. And so now what this provides is a window to make commitments into the repository. And so the repository, this is the repository that's on your machine. And so right now, if I come down here, I can see this path is a lot of not versioned files. And so I want to click all, because I want all these files into the repository. And then every commitment you do needs to have some message associated with it. So I'm going to say initial commit into GitLab. I'm going to press the commit button. It's now saying preparing. And now it's trying to copy all the files or put the files into the repository. And if I scroll down, it says, yep, you were successful in doing that. So what I've successfully done here is put these files into my local repository. Now I need to get them onto the GitLab site. And that's the process of pushing. So you can think of pushing as I'm pushing it to a remote location. So I'm going to say push. And now I have this, this window comes up. We're not going to get into branches. Given that you all be working individually, you really don't need to have multiple branches going on. We can get into that a little bit later. But everything should, by default, be set up. So I'm going to say OK. And now it's trying to copy everything to GitLab. And so it comes back, it says success, everything's great. And so now you notice that both assets and project directories now have these green checks. So now it's saying that my repository my current state is set up exactly as the repository. So there's no differences between the two. If I come over to GitLab, I'm going to click on Windows Project. And now you can see that this has now been updated. So I no longer get that initial the initial default window. Is now saying I have some files in here, so about 3 megabytes worth. I've done one commitment, and I can see the commitment in here. So if I even click on that, it'll show me the commitment. So what files were added, what were modified, things like that. So that's pretty cool. So moving forward, I come back here. So as you're working through your projects, you're going to be adding new files, modifying files. So for instance, if I look at the scripts, so say I open up character controller script. So I'm going to let Windows, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify the character controller script just to show what happens when I do this. And so, so here we've been working on assignment 2. So I'm going to add this little to-do message for myself. Need to show how to do double jump on Tuesday. So a reminder for myself, save that. So I don't really necessarily need to worry about opening Unity or anything like that because it's just a comment. So I'm going to come back, and now you can see that I have this little exclamation point because now the file is changed. The file is different from what's in the repository. But I want to commit this into the repository. So if I right click on that, I'm going to come back to this git commit master. So now it shows me, hey, this is the file that you modified. I'm going to say added to do for myself. Say commit. So that's been committed. If I say push, I'll now push that to the repository, and everything's good. And now if I were to refresh this, so if I would come back to, well, it's waiting right now, but coming back to this, it should show that now I have a second commit. Now you can see I've added the to-do for myself. So one thing you need to keep in mind, though, is that if you do make this copy, or if you do want to use the GitLab repository, at this point, I should no longer use Unity Project. Everything I should do should be contained within the repository version. So if you are wanting to use a repository, I would remove, say, this Unity Project. In fact, I'm just going to do that for myself right now, just so I don't forget. But this is the version that you should use now for any of your assignments. So that should cover everything with submitting to the Git repository. Definitely ask me any questions, but give it a try and see if you can get it to work.